Hi, I'm Mike Cavendish, Performance Director for British Triathlon and Team Leader for the Tokyo Olympic Games.
So Mike, going to Tokyo this year, you've got a mixture of experienced athletes and those making their debuts. How does that kind of team dynamic of the mixture help, do you think?
Well, it certainly helps to have some experienced faces there. You never want to go to Olympic Games, the biggest event that we do, and have 5 or 6 new athletes. So, but having said that, the inexperienced athletes are actually still quite experienced. You know, they've done plenty of World Series races, they've done a lot of triathlon racing generally. So when you get on the start line, a race is a race, and they know how to perform, and they know what to do. It's all the stuff that surrounds it, and that's where you like to see Vicky Hollands, your Jolly Brownlees, people that have been there before. They can kind of help guide them through that, and it just gives a nice balance, really. That when the stress is up, when things are kind of getting close to competition time, that experience will really play through.
And you talked about the atmosphere that surrounds the actual racing. How will that differ for Johnny and Vicky who have been before compared to the guys that haven't?
Well, I mean, they'll know what to expect. The biggest thing going into Olympic Games is kind of just fear of the unknown, really. As I said, those guys know what it's like going into a World Series. They've been there, they've done it. But when you get to Olympics, it's just completely different, or it can be completely different. The slight difference this time is that actually for us it's probably not going to be that much different, because the crowds are going to be smaller, we're going to be staying in a hotel. It won't quite be the same Olympic experience because of COVID that we've had previously, so that helps. But really it's about them just being there before, knowing what to expect when they get there.
And you mentioned it's a little bit different this time around because of COVID. How have the team been preparing for the bubble experience and with the restrictions currently in place?
Well, we've been operating kind of semi-bubbles really in all of our training centres now since COVID came along, and since we got back to swimming, would have been kind of last June sometime. So the guys are pretty used to operating with COVID protocols and temperature checking and all that kind of stuff. A lot of the team would have been out to Yokohama for the race earlier on in the season. That was a very, very strict bubble, so one of the reasons for taking guys out there was so they can get used to that. And just our advice has really been just limit all of your contacts, try and get used to what it is that you're going to be expecting to have out there.
And obviously the climate has been much talked about in the build-up to the Games. How have you guys been preparing for the heat and the humidity that will be raced in Tokyo?
So we've had a heat and humidity program now for the last kind of 4 or 5 years, so it takes a long time to build this stuff up. So they've all been doing, heat chamber exposure for the last 3, 4, 5 years, whether they were, very clearly going to the Games or not. We've got a long list, and they've all been exposed to that type of stuff. We've then had 2 lots of heat camps, so one in 2019 before the test event, and we've just finished one just now in tropical Loughborough, so in heat chambers, heating swimming pools up to 30, 31 degrees, and so it's really just about getting them in there and getting them used to that environment.
And you mentioned going to Yokohama, so you've been exposed to the atmosphere before. How much do you think the benefit of racing in Yokohama and the 2019 test event will prove when it comes to the racing this year?
Well, there's a few things. The first thing is around travel. It's a long way to go, it's a long journey, and that 8-hour time difference we often find is a really tricky one to get over. So anyone who's been to Yokohama, and thankfully all of the athletes that have going to be going to the Games have either been to Yokohama this year or in previous years, they know what that journey is like, they know what to expect. So that's one critical thing, and how you get over the jet lag. And the second one is around the course and the nature of the course. The reason why we focus quite a lot on Yokohama for this cycle is because it's the one course in the World Series cycle that's quite similar to the test event and to the Olympic course. So racing on that course, racing the type of race that we expect to happen in the Olympics is critical. And then getting to the test event, that was all about racing on the specific course with the exact environmental conditions. You're only going to get a chance to do that once pre-game, so for us that was huge. And we ran the test event pretty much like it was our Olympic Games, and I think that's one of the reasons why our results were so positive there.
And obviously mixed relays making its debut this year. How does that additional medal opportunity affect the dynamic and also the preparations for whilst you're in Tokyo?
Well, it gives us a second shot, right? Previously the athletes are going in, they've got one chance and one chance only. So I like to think it takes the pressure off a little bit, but equally it helps to bring the whole group together. When you were at Olympic Games previously, when there was only individual medal events, it was kind of every man and woman for themselves, really. And when it gets closer and closer to event time, it becomes a lot more tense. Whereas we've got that now, but they all know that actually they're going to be coming back together for the relay. And it's a really, really nice dynamic. The slight difference that we'll have with this is we've never really had an opportunity where we've had the same time difference between the individual and the relay. So it's 4 and 5 days between the men's and women's and the relay. even at the test event in Tokyo, it was only a day after. So we're a little bit into the unknown. We've never quite done it with this time difference because there's never been events of that nature. So for us, the challenge is that recovery and preparation between the individual and the relay. But we've got some good plans. We've got a lot of staff that are overseeing that. So I'm pretty sure that we'll hopefully be in a good place when we get to the relay.
And on a personal note, this is your first Olympics as triathlon team leader. How are you feeling for it and how are you looking forward to it?
Well, it's long overdue. I'm really excited for it. We've got an unbelievably good squad of athletes. We've left some really good athletes at home. And I'm just looking forward to seeing some racing. You know, this is, in my job and all of my colleagues' jobs, you do this because you're trying to get athletes to prepare for the pinnacle of the sport. This is the pinnacle of the sport and we're finally going to get to see it. So I just really looking forward to getting out there. I love Japan, seeing some races and hopefully coming home with some good performances.